I'm Richard Blackwell, and welcome to Jazz on My Mind. I'm excited to have as my guest today a young man whose family name is always associated with Latin jazz. A young man who has an extreme passion and love for his music. I would like to welcome Mr. Paris Escovedo. Welcome to Jazz on My Mind.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Well, like I mentioned, your family is, the name Escovedo is a legendary name in the world of jazz. And if I may, let's start by honoring your father, Mr. Thomas Coke Escovedo. Let's talk about your dad a little bit. How's that feel to have such a strong influence in your life as he gave to you?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. We grew up listening to various styles of music, watching his passion, his craft. I guess you call it perfecting it,
Yes.
And so just growing up, it's like a little kid in a candy store, because there was always so much talent around him, whether it be with Willie Bobo or Cal Jade or whoever was around. He was hanging out with Lou Rawls, whoever.
Those are some very heavy people back in the day. We know that your dad was responsible in a lot of ways with Tito Puente for bringing Latin jazz to Southern California, San Francisco in particular.
Right. He was such a big fan of Tito Puente's before he actually became friends, and so he kind of like studied him, So when he finally became friends, he said, "I got to bring you to San Francisco."
Wow.
Yes. So he kind of like was responsible for ushering in some of those players.
Your dad also, I know, you and I talked about, did a lot of work with one of my good buddies, the one and only Mr. Poncho Sanchez.
Yes.
And you said you had some interesting situations to tell us about your dad and Poncho.
Yeah, he was telling me a story when we did a show with him a couple of months ago. So, your dad was a good friend of mine because he never let me quit playing congas. Because congas at that time was prominently a Cuban instrument. A lot of the Mexican culture didn't really play. They were all into guitar, in the 70s, 60s. We're into guitar music, Santana, kind of thing. So he said, your dad Coke, he told me, if you quit playing congas, I'm going to throw that conga at you. So he was like, keep playing congas.
Isn't that something? I love that story.
So that's why he never quit playing congas. He said, your dad was always on me. So that's good.
Now, speaking of Tito, I know Tito gave you your first set of timbales when you were a little kid.
When I was 5.
5 years old?
5 years old.
Wow.
Yes, he brought me a pair of drums. And my mother threw them right outside.
Are you serious?
She threw them outside. She said, "I don't want you to be like your dad." I said, "What do you mean? I want to play." Because you can't keep it out. It's in the bloodline. So
it's in the blood.
Yeah.
Well, we also know that your dad was inducted into the Bay Area Blues and Jazz Hall of Fame in 2008. That had to be a tremendous honor for you.
Oh, it was a blessing also because of all the work he's done in the Bay Area, and the respect that he got back from the city. The mayor from Oakland was there, said wonderful things about him. He was a good friend of his. So it was great. It was a nice night.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Now let's talk about something that you have a passion for and that you have a tremendous love for. Let's talk about the Paris Escovedo project. Tell me what that's about.
It's something that I've always played with different artists, touring with different people. And one day someone just said, "You got to get your own thing together, do your thing." And I said, "Well, I don't have the right tunes yet." I always put it off. So I finally just got it together, and I just formed a band. It took me over, I think, about a year and a half
to really get your chemistry together.
To get the chemistry, maybe 2 years to get the players that I handpicked. I went every club, every venue that I saw. I said, "Hey, do you want to play with me?" Yeah, I love to play with you. So it just you get some that it works, some doesn't work.
Exactly.
But it's definitely a passion. It's something that was a work in progress that now I think is to its highest level.
So you've been together since 2003 as the Paris Escovedo project. Is that correct? Now, I know you played with some of the biggest stars in music business. Grammy Award winner Angie Stone, Pink, Arrested Development, Collective Soul. How did these artists influence your current musical agenda?
I think that, like with Speech and the Arrested Development, they're very positive. He's a very positive role model for not just the older generation, but the younger generation as well. His music is kind of influenced me as far as my music is more, although it's jazzier, but it's still funky.
Right.
You know, and so I kind of like twist it together. You know? But his impact is kind of like the way I view mine. You know, so.
Now, if you put a stamp on your music, some artists do, some don't. But if we put a stamp on your music, you said you would call it ghetto jazz.
Ghetto jazz.
Tell us about what ghetto jazz is all about.
Someone had asked me that, and they said, why do you call it ghetto jazz?
Right.
Well, ghetto jazz to me being that we grew up in Oakland, where it was primarily a pretty poor area where we grew up in.
Right.
So the east side of Oakland. So you would always hear Cuban music, you would hear salsa music, you'd hear reggae.
Tower Power.
You hear some Tower Power, you hear rock and roll, you hear jazz, blues, you know, classical. And that's kind of like what we fuse in our music.
That's beautiful.
It's a bunch of all of that.
That's
why I call it ghetto, because it's the ghetto. You hear everything. You know what I mean? Not that it's a bad quotation that the ghetto is bad, but you hear. I mean, if you go to the ghetto, you hear everything.
That's right.
You get a lesson.
Yeah, because a lot of things comprise the ghetto.
Not only that, it's real. You get real people
with
real feelings, and so that's why I call it ghetto jazz.
Now, you're working on your project, your new album. Do you have a new CD that is out now?
Yes.
And that's called?
The Paris Escovedo Project. The title of the CD is called Hit Them Skins.
Hit Them Skins. I sampled that a couple of nights ago, and that's probably one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Okay.
Love that track. Now, since we're talking about the Paris Escovedo Project, give us the name of some of the musicians that are collaborating with you to make this project happen. What are some of the individuals who are playing with you now?
We have Arthur Pruitt on saxophone.
And that's the one who does the solo on Hit Them Skins. Is that right? That guy's blowing, man. That cat is bad.
We call him Big Nasty.
Big Nasty.
We gave him that name in Japan.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that off the air. But we have him. We have Bobby Wilkerson on drums.
Now, Bobby played with Steve Arrington and Slave.
Yes.
Back in the 70s. I remember that. They were really hot back then.
Right.
And who else do you have with you?
I have Ken Tussing on trombone.
Ken was with Tito Puente.
Tito Puente and Mongo.
It's like, man, okay.
And we have Ray Ponson from Tito Puente's band.
Oh, okay. All right.
Trumpet player.
Trumpet player, that's right, okay. And I mean, I heard it, man, and it's, I tell you, Paris, it is sounding out of sight. I can hear it when you can't help but move when you hear that music. I mean, it hits you from the highs, it hits you from the lows, it just gets into your spirit. It's like, it's really phenomenal.
Right. There's a critic guy came up to me and said, "Your CD is so phenomenal." I said, "Wow, thank you." You know, not every song is the same. And a lot of times you hear a CD today, they all sound the same, every song.
That's incredible.
It's the same feeling, same vibe.
Right.
There's not really that much difference.
There's one on there, I remember, it was called, I believe, The Wolf.
The Wolf, yeah.
And you also did Suavecito.
Suavecito.
That was cooking, man. I love that as well. So, I mean, the style you can hear.
That was Larry Houston on keyboards.
Okay.
From
used to be Ohio Players, with Ohio Players many years ago.
Right.
But, I mean, and who's on vocals? Who's your vocalist?
The vocalist is a good friend of mine. We was featuring him because we kind of like did it like Maze and Frankie Beverly, featuring Frankie Beverly. So that's kind of how we did it. He's a great writer and singer as well, actor too. Gregory Esparza.
Yeah, he can really sing, man. The style, since you mentioned, I can hear that Oakland style. If people have listened to music for many years, such as I have and you have, that Oakland style is totally, totally different than your New York style, your Midwest style.
Right.
It's a totally different style.
Right. That was one of the things that, like with my father, when he started playing in the Bay Area, it was a lot of the New York people that came to live in the Bay Area were, what do we listen to over here in Oakland that will make us feel like home? Mm-hmm. Oh, Coke Escovedo stuff. It sounds similar, but it's got that vibe.
Yeah, it has very hot sounds.
Right.
Very hot. Now, I know that you're doing some work with your